Nepal youth protests resume after government lifts social media ban. Chorus grows for PM Oli's resignation. US proposes 25% tax on companies for hiring foreign workers. We tell you all you need to know about Washington's Hire Act. Trump's motor-mouth tariff advisor Peter Navarro's latest anti-India rant says it won't end well for India amid tariff row. World's biggest democracy to get new vice president today. It's NDA's CP Radhakrishnan versus India Alliance B. Sudarshan Reddy. Voting currently underway. US lawmakers release Epstein's birthday book with alleged notes from US President Donald Trump and former President Bill Clinton. And hours to go for the Asia Cup 2025 as Team India begin as favourites to lift cricket trophy. A top focus this Tuesday on India Global Viewers. Protests in Nepal are far from over, even after the government reversed its controversial social media ban. Streets in Kathmandu and major cities, in fact, across the country remain tense today, with fresh clashes being reported across multiple cities, and some even from just outside the country's parliament, homes of many central ministers in the KP Oli Sharma government. Now, what began as peaceful protests led by Gen Z students has now spiraled into total and utter violent confrontations across the Himalayan country. Stone pelting, tear gas and curfews dominate the scene, as we've been seeing, and also as the visuals show on your screens right now. This as public anger only continues to boil over and simmer against the incumbent KP Sharma Oli government, with calls growing, in fact, for the resignation of the Prime Minister himself. Now, this comes right at the back of multiple ministers resigning from the KP Sharma Oli government. It started with Nepal's Home Minister, then the Agriculture Minister. We also had the Health Minister resign this morning. Now, despite the internet ban being lifted late last night, protesters are still demanding accountability. They are blaming the government for corruption and poor governance across the board. At least 19 people, meanwhile, have lost their lives and over 300 are injured in the unrest so far. Meanwhile, in a late-night address, PM KP Sharma Oli expressed condolences to the families of the deceased and has denied any intention of permanently shutting down social media platform. This is not it. The PM has also, in fact, summoned an all-party meeting in a while from now. Meanwhile, India has also urged its citizens in Nepal, across Nepal, to stay alert as curfews still remain in place. Now, tensions still high and all eyes are on how the government will respond next and how the protesters will respond to the government cracking down on them. Meanwhile, my colleague Aditya Raj Kaul gets you the latest from just outside the parliament in capital Kathmandu.
Very angry opinion coming from the youth of Nepal, saying that the social media was banned. That led to not just a cry small business owners and influencers, but daily life got impacted for people. And this was a draconian measure by the Prime Minister KP Sharma Oli. And apart from that, the corruption charges that have been leveled against him. If Prem can pan and show you, these are the anti-riot gear, police of the Nepal police that has been deployed here all across the the Parliament complex, across the neighboring area. And if we can move a little further, there's been massive stone pelting in this area. There are tires that have been burning, and hundreds of protesters who have converged here, who say that this violent protest will continue. The youth are rising here in Nepal for a regime change and perhaps want a transparent and a government that is for the people and not an elitist government that actually remains in their elite towers and palaces and in fact does not bring any transparency. So the protest here only continues. We are continuously bringing you live visuals from this protest area. This is the main area just meters away from the Nepal Parliament. Prem is showing you that exact complex next to the barricade is the Nepal Parliament, where in fact the army has been deployed. In fact, more forces and ambulances you can see that are coming in this area, even as the APF, the anti-riot gear police has been stationed here. Every passing minute, the amount of people that are coming here to protest is only increasing. So very dramatic visuals coming on your screens of the deployment of the APF, but also people who are demanding justice, who are demanding action, who are saying that there needs to be accountability at the highest level. There has been joblessness, there has been complete economic downturn, and the responsibility is with the Prime Minister of the country.
Well, dramatic scenes there in Nepal's capital, Kathmandu, where, of course, NDTV's senior executive editor Aditya Raj Kaul keeps on getting us the latest. Meanwhile, we shift our focus westwards, where the US is now turning up the heat on outsourcing. That's correct. A new bill called the Hire Act proposes a 25% tax on payments to foreign workers, aiming to push American companies to keep jobs at home. At least that's the claim that we are getting. Now, if passed, this could directly impact India's $250 billion IT industry, which earns over half of its revenue from US clients. Major players, moreover, like TCS, Infosys and Wipro, could see rising costs and shrinking contracts. While the US hopes to boost local jobs, Indian tech leaders warn this move may just hurt innovation and global competitiveness. My colleague Vishal Vivek joins me for more on this. Vishal, what is this proposed Hire Act all about, and what are its likely implications going to be?
Well, as you rightly mentioned, Arjun, this is still in a proposal stage. It will have to go through a series of proposals to get it to the final stage and be implemented. We are far from that stage, but still it has sent shivers down the spine of many US firms that hire outsource workers from the US to the Indian territory. So what this bill will do is it will make outsourcing more expensive. And why is that? Because any firm that is willing to hire workers from outside the US territory will have to pay 25% tax. So that will be quite heavy on their financial strain, and also IT companies will be directly affected because Indian IT companies are known to be in contact with the US firms for these outsourcing duties. So IT firms in India will be most definitely affected, and this will completely stop the complete stoppage of outsourcing will be quite difficult. This is what experts have been suggesting, analysts have been suggesting, that even though this act will be implemented soon, but the fact that completely stopping outsourcing will be quite difficult. Why is that? Because scale of Indian talent can't be matched by US workforce. So the majority of these high-skilled workers belong to the Asian continent, particularly to India and China. So to just replace them overnight won't be practical. So that scale of talent won't be available as far as the domestic US crowd is concerned. So the implementation of this act will be quite difficult. And lastly, US firms will find it hard to manage large-scale operations because a lot of these big tech companies such as Meta, such as Google, Microsoft, they all depend on these outsourced Indian workers who contribute a lot to their revenue, to their workforce. So to just remove such a big chunk of their workforce will be quite detrimental detrimental to their overall progress and health, the application of this act would be quite difficult. So this is what we have so far, but we'll have to see how this will play out in the longer run, because we are still in the proposal stage, as you rightly mentioned.
Well, thank you so much for getting us the latest there, Vishal, and putting these developments into perspectives. Further, we are also joined by Jayant N. Kola. He's a partner at Convergence Catalyst. Thank you so much for taking out the time and speaking with us this Tuesday afternoon, Mr. Kola. Now, how practical, let me ask you off the bat, how very practical is it for US companies to altogether completely stop outsourcing to India?
In the short to medium term, it's not practical at all. Just like your colleague Vivek was mentioning, they cannot do this overnight, because for more than a generation, the US companies have been dependent on various IT outsourcing destinations, primarily of that India, right? And what they find is not just the talented Indian workforce, but we Indians are great at our communication skills as well, mind you. I mean, 150 of us speak English extremely well, right? So, and it's apart from the cost component. So in the short to medium term, it will be difficult for the US companies to completely, stop outsourcing to India. What this bill will ensure is it will make things costlier, because what we've observed with the manufacturing tariff, that came in the apparel sector, what we are seeing is the US companies, the US brands, the US buyers are asking their manufacturing vendors in India to absorb the tariff, while at the same time increasing the cost for the retail consumer there, right? So this tax bill, might also actually in practice, in the short to medium term, lead to that. It might make the services in US costlier for the end consumer.
Now, we spoke about the impact on the US. What impact will this have on India? We've got IT industry giants warning of a detrimental impact to the Indian industry as well. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I mean, out of the $250 billion, our exports are 80% of it. $200 billion is our software exports business, and a huge chunk of that to the US market. If this bill goes through, there will be a detrimental effect for the Indian companies, Indian IT services companies, definitely, because that tax might be passed on directly to for the Indian IT companies to absorb a huge chunk of it. If we are seeing the same parallels to draw out how we've seen in the manufacturing and the apparel industry to draw parallel from, right? And we do not know if it will be only for the different companies like IT outsourcing companies, Infosys, TCS, it will be affected, or the GCCs as well, the global capability centers, wherein the global companies are setting up their own outsourcing centers here in India. Will they be affected or not? But in the short to medium term, there is definitely going to be an impact on the Indian companies from their bottom line point of view. Okay, from their bottom line, definitely. And Indian companies need to look for different countries, different markets, including the domestic market, to focus their revenue generation and divert their revenue generation on.
Right. What about the long run? How will this, may I say, affect or rather hurt US innovation and even competitiveness in the long run? Short run, we just heard from you. What about the long run?
In the long run, this is another spoke in the multipolarity world wheel, right? I think all the countries are gearing up for that. I mean, we've seen when when we've been hit by tariff, our leaders attended the SEO summit and tried to expand our GDP and businesses there. So in the long run, there is going to be an impact. At the end of the day, this is another spoke in the multipolarity world that we seem to be that seems to be evolving on all fronts. I mean, geopolitically, economically, socially, on all fronts. And it will also probably see a lot of brain drain from India, a lot of migration, from India for people to US, because it will be very difficult for US to come up with a workforce in less than a generation to offset this. So they will be dependent on the migrant workforce, wherein we will see that a lot of Indian workforce might be migration. So there'll be a lot of migratory impact as well in the long term.
So it'll take Washington around a generation to come up with such workers, opines Mr. Kola. Mr. Kola, my last question to you, we're running out of time here. How should the Indian IT firms or the IT sector, strategically respond if this higher act, in fact, does end up becoming a law, as we've seen all kinds of laws under this Trump 2.0 administration?
In the short term, be prepared to absorb some of these bottom line impact, while at the same time frantically working for looking at other markets, including the domestic market, to move their revenue generation to. In the short to medium term, that's the strategy that they need to adopt, which I think is going to be the reality one way or the other.
Well, thank you so much for taking out the time and joining us here on India Global, Mr. Kola. Now we shift our gaze eastwards, viewer, where the Kremlin has in fact fired back after President Donald Trump threatened new sanctions over Russia's latest deadly assault on Ukraine. The Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov has said no sanction will ever force Russia to change course, insisting and underlining rather that Moscow will not back down from what it calls its special military operation in Ukraine. Now, the strong response follows Trump's warning of a second stage of sanctions after Russia launched its largest attack of the war yet, striking Kyiv's main government building for the first time. More than 800 drones and 13 missiles slammed into cities across Ukraine, killing at least four people, including a 3-month-old baby. Meanwhile, Ukraine's President Zelensky has called the attack a war crime, and in fact, he is urging the US for a stronger response. Meanwhile, Trump says he'll speak to Putin soon, as European leaders head to Washington this week to discuss the next steps. Meanwhile, for our viewers who are just joining in, the Kremlin has fired back, or rather thrown down the gauntlet, after President Donald Trump threatened new sanctions over Russia's latest deadly assault on Ukraine. Now, this reply comes just a couple of days after, in fact, US President Donald Trump warned of to impose secondary sanctions against Moscow. Spokesperson Dmitry Peskov has said, and I'm quoting here, no sanctions will ever force Russia to change its course. He's also insisted, and not only said this, but also underlined that Moscow will not back down from what it calls its special military operation. Now, it's very important to note that Trump's latest warning comes after the total breakdown of the much-touted Alaska summit, where he met President Putin, his Russian counterpart, for the first time since the beginning of the war. Meanwhile, my colleague Gauri Dwivedi joins us for the latest on this. Gauri, a straight message coming out of Moscow, almost throwing down the gauntlet to Donald Trump this time, and also at the back of Russia's biggest aerial attack across Ukrainian cities. What's the latest you're picking up?
See, Arjun, the message from Kremlin is absolutely clear that this kind of conversation, this kind of messaging that's coming in repeatedly from Washington, which is about threatening more sanctions, is now not going to yield any returns. In fact, it's now beginning to look like it's going to have diminishing returns, because Kremlin is very clear that they are not going to back down, and what they called a special military operation, or SMO, that will continue irrespective of the kind of conversation, the talk, the messaging that keeps coming in from the Washington side. It also comes at a time when Russia is pounding Ukrainian cities in the largest drone attack since this war started 3.5 years ago. So that tells you how Kremlin is actually viewing these sanctions talk from Washington side. And it is also, in fact, making note of how the entire summit took place with 30 other countries when Zelensky and several other European leaders were together along with Donald Trump, and when the whole talk about more sanctions started. Now, what this indicates is two things. First, and most important aspect, Arjun, it means that there is no immediate political solution at this stage if sanctions is the only playbook that Trump plays back. That's the first important thing. Second important fact is that there is nothing that is bringing Vladimir Putin to the negotiating table right now. He has the military momentum. He has shown that at a time when there is a 30-nation conference taking place to find a political resolution, he chooses to respond in the harshest military terms as far as pounding Ukrainian cities with its largest drone attack. And the last key takeaway is what it means is that at the end of the day, there has to be some talk about give and take on leverage. What that will be is something that Donald Trump has to identify, work towards it. But for that to happen, he needs to get out of his sanctions playbook. That's the only thing that he's been talking about ever since it became clear that Vladimir Putin walked out with a lot more in terms of wins after the Alaska summit than the American president.
Well, Donald Trump needs to get out of his sanctions playbook to make some credible progress. Thank you so much, Corey, for getting us the latest on this developing story. Viewers, and with that, it's time we step into a short break. Much more on the other side. Don't you go anywhere. Welcome back. You're watching India Global. Viewers, there's yet another stunning new twist to the Jeffrey Epstein investigation. US House Republicans have just released the full contents of Epstein's infamous birthday book. That's correct, and it's raising serious questions. The revelations have triggered bipartisan calls for total transparency. Our next report decodes what's really inside Epstein's tainted birthday book and why exactly is it shaking up Washington's power corridors. Take a look. It's been called the black book that parties wish you'd never read. Now it's public. A window into Jeffrey Epstein's inner circle. House Republicans have released the full birthday book from Epstein's 50th celebration. It's packed with handwritten and typed notes, including allegedly from former President Bill Clinton and Harvard professor Alan Dershowitz. But the spark that ignited the release, a disputed letter reportedly signed by then businessman Donald Trump. The letter features a cryptic conversation between Trump and Epstein inside an apparently hand-drawn outline of a woman's torso. Trump's alleged signature is located just below the hips of the drawing.
I don't do drawings of women, that I can tell you. They say there's a drawing of a woman, and I don't do drawings of women.
Trump denies it all. He says the signature is fake and the photo fabricated. But Republicans now accuse Democrats of cherry-picking, highlighting only Trump's page while ignoring names like Clinton's. Clinton's note praises Epstein's childlike curiosity. Dershowitz's message includes a fake Vanity Fair parody cover with headlines like Al-Qaeda in South America financed by Epstein and Jeffrey Epstein's bloody summer.
We've been mocked, we've been doubted, we've been re-traumatized, while those responsible hide in secrecy. Why don't we deserve justice?
We are the keys to this situation. We have the truth. And the FBI knows the truth. The government knows the truth. You may pull the wool over the sheep's eyes, but we are the keys. We know who was involved.
Their demand is loud and clear: release everything. The survivors say enough with political games. They want the truth, accountability, and they're naming names. Epstein died in jail 6 years ago. Ghislaine Maxwell is behind bars. But for the survivors and lawmakers alike, the case is still far from closed. What's inside this book might just be another beginning. Bureau Report, NDTV World. And finally, viewers, the battle for Asia begins today. Afghanistan take on Hong Kong in the tournament opener. Meanwhile, India, the official host of the 8-team tournament, but due to strained political ties with Pakistan, the matches are being played on a neutral territory. The next 3 weeks will provide the stage for politics, passion, and new rivalries. And with that, it's time we strip into a short break. News continues on the other side. Take care and have a wonderful day.